Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time I'm playing in the Kanonenjagdpanzer, a tier 8 German tank destroyer of the premium variety. And I know there are currently 7 tier 8 German tank destroyers in the game. How crazy is that? There of course is the Kanonenjagdpanzer. You've got the original standard Ferdinand, the Jagdpanther 2, the Borsig and the Jagdtiger 88, and you've also got 2 variants of the Scorpion, one with the funky desert camouflage, which is called the Scorpion G, and the standard camouflage just called the Rheinmetall Scorpion. And so you might be thinking, as well as there being quite a lot of German tank destroyers, for example the E-25 at tier 7, what's the point of this one? Well, this one is ludicrously fast. It goes at 70 kilometers an hour, and it has an excellent power to weight ratio of just under 20, which allows it to shift. And on top of that, its ground resistances are very nice as well, unlike the Scorpion, which means that this thing is pretty much as fast, or just a little less than an RU-251, of which the vehicle's hull is based on. As we can see here, it does look a lot like an RU-251, right? So the Kanonenjagdpanzer is all about rushing into an aggressive position such as this, surprising your opponents, and then picking them apart with the 90mm gun that this vehicle uses. Now, the penetration on this tank used to be awful. I think it used to have 218mm of penetration or so. Wargaming buffed that significantly a few patches ago, so now it has 238 on its standard rounds, and its premium rounds have got 250. One interesting thing about the ammunition on this vehicle, however, and it has got a very advanced loadout, is that the standard rounds are actually quite fast. They go at 1,000 meters, well, 1,030 meters a second, whereas the premium rounds on this vehicle are going at 1,145 with the heat rounds. So your heat rounds are actually faster, believe it or not. So if you want to snipe at long range at a fast moving tank and you want to give yourself just a little bit of an advantage, then maybe the heat rounds will do the job for you. One thing that I love about the Kanonenjagdpanzer, and you might have noticed that I take a lot of high explosive rounds on this tank, and that's because they have extra high penetration for high explosive rounds. Look at that, 102mm of penetration, which allow you to certainly pick apart your lightly armored opponents very quickly indeed. And you need to make up for the terrible alpha damage of the standard round of this tank. 240 average damage on the standard rounds is less than half of, for example, the 128mm guns that your standard German tier 8 tank destroyers are going to be using, such as the Scorpion with its 490 alpha damage. So you have to fire twice and hit with the Kanonenjagdpanzer, and you're still going to be slightly less damage than you would have had on average in, shall we say, the flavor of the month, the German tier 8 premium tank destroyer that is the Scorpion. However, the Kanonenjagdpanzer has a couple of other things going for it. One, it is rather accurate indeed at 0.32 accuracy, but more importantly, its aim time is phenomenal. 1.9 seconds aim time and very decent gun dispersion values, both when you're moving the tank, when you're turning the tank, when you're turning the gun. It's all better than the Scorpion. And I actually realized, did I say 1.9 seconds? I meant 1.8 seconds in this vehicle for the aim time. And so you barely have to aim, really, with the tank. And so I love that feature about it. You don't have to stop for long to be able to effectively engage your opponents, shoot and scoot at its finest, a playstyle which I really do enjoy. So we put one into the top of the T-25-2 there, but I'm quite worried immediately of the tanks that are going to be coming around the east. We're going to be focusing on the 5916, but I'm really worried about that Ferdinand, the IS-3. I think I'm going to notice them in a second. And to be able to stop these tanks from flanking in and coming across the field, I'm going to have to relocate. Certainly something that isn't a problem in this vehicle using its decent top speed. So we're going to see if we can put a shot across. I realize now, oh gosh, those are some very dangerous Revolorices and an IS-3 coming in on the enemy team. The best way to counter them is going to be to counter them from the JK-12 area. I'm quite surprised that, look at all of these German tank destroyers here. Well, talk of the devil, we've got a Borsig right there, a Stura Mil and a Scorpion G, all hitting the mid-ridge, but nobody all the way to the south. And being able to extend your view range from the south is rather important. So now we spot a tier 7 Japanese heavy tank, the Oni, out in the open. We bounce our first round, we penetrate our second round, and he's going to turn the front of his hull towards us, but we don't need to worry about him right now because I'm going to turn my attention to the T-25-2. And now I'm firing a heat round there, loading AP again. Will the 230mm go through the Oni? Yes, it will. but I'm going to be loading the premium round. Remember, the heat round, slightly higher penetration. But more importantly, heat rounds do not lose any penetration over distance, and so I've got far more chance to be able to penetrate those heavily armored targets with the heat rounds than I would do with the AP rounds. Now I lock the IS-3 in place. We're going to be putting another one right into his hull, and I decided that I don't want to waste too many credits, so I'm going to fire AP here. Of course, it locks down his tracks. Now I'm going to fire high explosives, so I'm going to aim at his tracks and try and hold him in place. 7 damage, that's not quite what we're looking for. Will the second round do better? Yeah. I think the first round probably hit some of the spaced armor over the front of the vehicle. Actually, it doesn't count as spaced armor, but the tracks do absorb a little bit more. I think they give 20 extra millimeters of protection to the IS-3. But we get a couple of good rounds into the Revolurise. Now, even though this tank is firing rather quickly, and I do have an exceptional crew in this tank, the IS-3 presses towards us. We fire one clutch at him, managing to penetrate his tank, and we start to pull back. Even though this tank does fire very quickly, and it has a decent rate of fire for this gun, 9.52 rounds a minute, the DPM is still a little bit underwhelming on this vehicle. For example, if you look at the previous tank, well, the lower tier tank, the E25, which has preferential matchmaking and never has to see tier 9 tanks, the Kanonenjagdpanzer definitely sees tier 9, and it also sees tier 10 as well. The E25 actually has significantly higher DPM than the Kanonenjagdpanzer, and every single one of the other 6 German tier 8 tank destroyers also has higher DPM than the Kanonenjagdpanzer. Now, I make a bit of a mistake here. They've got 2 people inside the cap circle, and I get double tagged by the Revolorises on the enemy team. One thing that's also slightly annoying is they rolled a little bit high, which means that now the IS-3 is literally just better than being a 50-50 whether he's going to kill me. But with 10 seconds left on the game, I don't have long to worry about it. Am I going to have to make my way over? No, luckily my team interrupt the KV-2, and this looks like this is going to be the last shot I'm going to get if the Revolurise rams me a little bit. Yes, he does, and takes me out. 4,300 damage done, 1,162 spotting. But it looks like we're in a good position because that Revolurise had to sacrifice his entire tank to be able to take me out. Not a bad trade there. In fact, a very good trade for me, considering now that we've taken out the KV-2 in the cap circle, which means there must be the other M4A1 Revolurise, and this T-34-3 is going to make his way round. Now, from this position, the best thing that the T-34-85 can do would be to just get into one of the bushes and spot, and then hopefully the AMX-12T, the Leo, and the FCM-52, who are both very, very weak, will be able to shoot in and hopefully engage them. There we go, 1 shot coming in, 2 shots coming in. The AMX-12T decides to just open fire on the Revolurise, and somebody's firing high explosive rounds. Do you think the Leo loaded a high explosive round to interrupt the cap, or do you think that was the FCM-50T? Either way, it looks like the IS-3 puts a big old shell into the T-34-85, and the T-34-85 misses the Revolurise. Come on, guys, you got to finish it off. Great stuff. The Leo takes down the tier 8 French premium medium tank, and this FCM-50T decides to drive towards the IS-3. Buddy, what are you doing right now? The thing that an FCM-50T wants to be doing against an IS-3 with a load of hit points is to try and get as long range as possible. The FCM-50T has got 400 meters view range. The IS-3 certainly does not. Terrible play by the FCM-50T here. Allows the IS-3 to get the jump on him. Absolutely catastrophic for our chances to be able to win this game, because now we have a very low health tier 7 Swedish medium tank and a T-34-85, a tier 6 Soviet medium tank, having to deal with an IS-3 who has already picked up 3 kills. And the IS-3 certainly is a very heavily armored tank. Now you see me pinging the map because I'm suggesting that the Leo and the T-34-85 go towards the cap circle. The IS-3, remember, it's not exactly a super slow heavy, but it's certainly not the fastest heavy. The Leo listens, and he goes straight towards the cap circle. In my opinion, the strongest play. The T-34-85, on the other hand, is going to take the scenic route, bounces into some rocks. Right now, if the T-34-85 wanted to just win this game super easily, all he would have to do is to just drive in a straight line along here, make his way all along here and get towards the cap circle. And with 2 people in the cap circle, combine that with the fact that the IS-3 has a very poor view range at 350 meters base, he's not going to spot stationary tanks until he gets exceptionally close to them. However, as we can still see, the T-3485 continues to take the scenic route all the way through the town, probably adding on about a 30 seconds to a minute. In fact, he would probably already be in the cap circle if he hadn't gone all the way around. But alas, we're going to have to see, does that IS-3 manage to get back with 45 seconds left? So the T-3485 now trundling his way through the mid-ridge. I guess he wants to shoot the IS-3. Maybe no cap kill all. Oh gosh, the IS-3 has indeed been spotted right now. And it looks like he sees the Leo at quite a good distance, puts a shot right into him, taking out the Tier 7 Swede. And now it is going to be a T-3485 versus an IS-3 in a 1 versus 1 engagement. Now the T-3485 needs to take the tracks off the IS-3. Great shot, he's done exactly what he needed to do. Now he's got to try and keep those tracks off at all costs while engaging the weak rear armor on the IS-3. However, it looks like unfortunately this T-3485 is just auto-aiming at the IS-3. Now he's got frustrated at bouncing armor-piercing rounds that he started to fire high explosive rounds. The first one works well against the tracks and he does a little bit of damage, but unfortunately he's not going to hold the IS-3 in place for very long. But the IS-3 foolishly isn't turning his turret and his tracks in the correct direction. He needs to combine them at the same time. And will the T-3485 manage to track him? Looks like he's auto-aiming the high explosive rounds. The IS-3 still hasn't quite figured out that he needs to turn his tracks and his turret in the same way at the same time. And the T-3485 takes his tracks off once again. Right now, all this T-3485 has to do is just put a few armor-piercing rounds into the rear of the IS-3. But it doesn't look like he's doing that. What a ludicrous end to the game we are seeing right here. But it looks like the IS-3 figures it out in the end. Oh, I've got to turn my turret and the tracks in the same way, and manages to reverse at the increased rate and take out the Tier 6 Soviet medium tank. What a hilarious, albeit slightly disappointing end to this round of World of Tanks. So this was our third mark of excellence in the Kanonenjagdpanzer, an ace tanker for this defeat, 809 base experience points, but we get courageous resistance and a bonus for being a premium tank, meaning that we actually get 2079 experience from this game. Also, even though we did fire a few heat rounds, we still make a cool 91,000 credits profit. Also getting a Confederate for assisting our team, a high caliber medal for dealing the most damage in this game, 4,314. Wow, that Reveillerise on the enemy team nearly stole the high caliber away, and also a tank sniper for dealing the most damage at long range. And that certainly is the position that you want to keep the Kanonenjagdpanzer, as it has the best camo rating when firing of any of the Tier 8 German tank destroyers. In fact, if you put a camo net on this vehicle and have a full concealment crew, your camo rating when firing will still be over about 15 or 16%, which means that if somebody wants to see you when firing at 400 meters, they're going to need about 460 meters view range. And when you're in a matchup like this, not a lot of people have 460 meters view range, and that gives you a lot of opportunities to just keep firing at your opponents without them seeing you. And that is really how I ended up being successful in the Kanonenjagdpanzer. Here were my final run of games in the tank, with this game here on Fisherman's Bay being the 3 mark in the tank. Luckily, I was running pretty hot in this vehicle. As we can see, 6 out of 7 games in a row were ace tankers. And while I certainly don't think that this tank is going to be everyone's cup of tea, and I think you'll do a hell of a lot better just picking up the Scorpion and having that big old gun. If you do like to use mobility, camo rating and view range to be able to out-snipe and outplay your opponents, then this can be an interesting vehicle, but I certainly wouldn't ever recommend this as a pickup for one of your first premium tanks in the game. And so hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, I'd really appreciate it. And if you're watching this video as it's released, it's Sunday and time for another Tech Tree showcase on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. This week, a lot of people combined on Twitter and also on Facebook have voted for the E50M, apparently because it's not weak. So thank you so much to Victor for your suggestion. And if you haven't seen one of my Tech Tree showcases before, it's basically like a miniature tank review all the way up the tree, starting from Tier 1 and culminating today with the E50M. So you can see what the line is like if you're thinking about grinding your way through it, or if you've already got it, maybe pick up some tips and tricks. So as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.